Gertrude Margaret Lowthian Bell, CBE, was an English writer, traveller, political officer, administrator, archaeologist and spy who explored, mapped, and became highly influential to British imperial policy-making due to her skill and contacts, built up through extensive travels in Greater Syria, Mesopotamia, Asia Minor, and Arabia. Along with T. E. Lawrence, Bell helped establish the Hashemite dynasties in what is today Jordan as well as in Iraq. She played a major role in establishing and helping administer the modern state of Iraq, utilizing her unique perspective from her travels and relations with tribal leaders throughout the Middle East. During her lifetime she was highly esteemed and trusted by British officials and given an immense amount of power for a woman at the time. She has been described as one of the few representatives of His Majesty's government remembered by the Arabs with anything resembling affection. Early life: Bell was born on July 14, 1868 in Washington Hall, County Durham, England, now known as Dame Margaret Hall, to a family whose wealth enabled her travels. She is described as having reddish hair and piercing blue-green eyes, with her mother's bow-shaped lips and rounded chin, her father unregistered trademark oval face and pointed nose. Her personality was characterized by energy, intellect, and a thirst for adventure which shaped her path in life. Her grandfather was the ironmaster Sir Isaac Lowthian Bell, an industrialist and a Liberal Member of Parliament, in Benjamin Disraeli's second term. His role in British policy-making exposed Gertrude at a young age to international matters and most likely encouraged her curiosity for the world, and her later involvement in international politics. Bell's mother, Mary Shield Bell, died in 1871, while giving birth to a son, Maurice. Gertrude Bell was just 3 at the time, and the death led to a lifelong close relationship with her father, Sir Hugh Bell, 2nd Baronet, who was 3 times Mayor of Middlesbrough, High Sheriff of Durham 1895, Justice of the Peace, Deputy Lieutenant of County Durham, Lord Lieutenant of the North Riding of Yorkshire. Throughout her life she consulted with him on political matters. Some biographies say the loss of her mother had caused underlying childhood trauma, revealed through periods of depression and risky behavior. At the age of 7 Bell acquired a stepmother, Florence Bell, and eventually, 3 half-siblings. Florence Bell was a playwright and author of children's stories, as well as the author of A Study of Bell Factory Workers. She instilled concepts of duty and decorum in Gertrude and contributed to her intellectual activities. Florence Bell's activities with the Wives of Bulko Vaughan ironworkers in Eston, near Middlesbrough, may have helped influence her stepdaughter's later stance promoting education of Iraqi women. Gertrude Bell received her early education from Queen's College in London and then later at Lady Margaret Hall, Oxford University at the age of 17. History was one of the few subjects women were allowed to study, due to the many restrictions imposed on them at the time. She specialized in modern history, in which she received a first-class honors degree in 2 years. Bell never married. She had an unconsummated affair with Major Charles Doughty Wiley, a married man, with whom she exchanged love letters from 1913 to 1915. Upon his death in 1915 at Gallipoli, Bell launched herself into her work. Travels and writings: Bell's uncle, Sir Frank Lascelles, was British minister at Tehran, Persia. In May 1892, after leaving Oxford, Bell travelled to Persia to visit him. She described this journey in her book, Persian Pictures, which was published in 1894. She spent much of the next decade travelling around the world, mountaineering in Switzerland, and developing a passion for archaeology and languages. She had become fluent in Arabic, Persian, French and German as well as also speaking Italian and Turkish. In 1899, Bell again went to the Middle East. She visited Palestine and Syria that year and in 1900, on a trip from Jerusalem to Damascus, she became acquainted with the Druze living in Jabal al-Druze. She traveled across Arabia 6 times over the next 12 years. Between 1899 and 1904, she conquered a number of mountains including the Lumiage and Mont Blanc as she recorded 10 new paths or first ascents in the Bernese Alps. One alpine peak in the Bernese Oberland, the 2632 m Gertrudspitze, was named after her after it was first traversed by her and her guides Ulrich and Heinrich Führer in 1901. However, she did fail in an attempt to the Finstridehorn in August 1902 when inclement weather including snow, hail and lightning forced her to spend 48 hours on the rope with her guides, clinging to the rock facing terrifying conditions which nearly cost her her life. She published her observations in the book Syria, the Desert and the Zone published in 1907. In this book she described, photographed and detailed her trip to Greater Syria's towns and cities like Damascus, Jerusalem, Beirut, Antioch and Alexandretta. Bell's vivid descriptions opened up the Arabian deserts to the Western world. In March 1907, Bell journeyed to the Ottoman Empire and began to work with the archaeologist and New Testament scholar Sir William M. Ramsay. Their excavations in Berkelis were chronicled in 8001 churches. In 1907, they discovered a field of ruins in northern Syria on the east bank of the upper course of the Euphrates to the steep slope of the former river valley. From the ruins, they created a plan and described the ramparts, Munbia, where my tents were pitched. The Arabic name means only a high-altitude course. Was probably the Berseba in Ptolemy's list of city names. It consists of a double rampart, situated on the river bank. In January 1909, she left for Mesopotamia. She visited the Hittite city of Carchemish, mapped and described the ruin of Ur-Qadr and finally went to Babylon and Najaf. Back in Carchemish, she consulted with the two archaeologists on site. One of them was T.E. Lawrence. Her 1913 Arabian journey was generally difficult. She was the second foreign woman after Lady Anne Blunt to visit Hull. War and political career. At the outbreak of World War I, Bell's request for a Middle East posting was initially denied. She instead volunteered with the Red Cross in France. Later, she was asked by British intelligence to get soldiers through the deserts, and from the World War I period until her death she was the only woman holding political power and influence in shaping British imperial policy in the Middle East. She often acquired a team of locals which she directed and led on her expeditions. Throughout her travels Bell established close relations with tribe members across the Middle East. Additionally, being a woman gave her exclusive access to the chambers of wives of tribe leaders, giving her access to other perspectives and functions. Work in the Middle East. In November 1915, however, she was summoned to Cairo to the Nascent Arab Bureau, headed by General Gilbert Clayton. She also again met T.E. Lawrence. Like Lawrence, Bell had attended Oxford and earned first-class honours in modern history. Bell spoke Arabic, Persian, French and German. She was an archaeologist, traveller and photographer in the Middle East before World War I. Under recommendation by renowned archaeologist and historian Lieutenant CMDR David Hogarth, first Lawrence, then Bell, were assigned to Army Intelligence Headquarters in Cairo in 1915 for war service. Because both Bell and Lawrence had traveled the desert and established ties with the local tribes and gained unique perspectives of the people and the land before World War I, Hogarth realized the value of Lawrence and Bell's expertise. Both Bell and Lawrence stood hardly 5 inches, yet both could ride with great determination and endurance through the desert for hours on end. At first she did not receive an official position, but, in her first months there, helped Hogarth set about organizing and processing her own, Lawrence's and Captain W.H.I. Shakespeare's data about the location and disposition of Arab tribes that could be encouraged to join the British against the Ottoman Empire. Lawrence and the British used the information in forming alliances with the Arabs. On March 3, 1916, General Clayton abruptly sent Bell to Basra, which British forces had captured in November 1914, to advise Chief Political Officer Percy Cox regarding an area she knew better than any other Westerner. She drew maps to help the British Army reach Baghdad safely. She became the only female political officer in the British forces and received the title of Liaison Officer, Correspondent to Cairo. She was Harry St. John Philby's field controller, and taught him the finer arts of behind-the-scenes political maneuvering. After British troops took Baghdad on March 10, 1917, Bell was summoned by Cox to Baghdad and given the title of Oriental Secretary. She, Cox and Lawrence were among a select group of Orientalists convened by Winston Churchill to attend a 1921 conference in Cairo to determine the boundaries of the British Mandate and nation-states such as Iraq. Gertrude is supposed to have described Lawrence as being able to ignite fires in cold rooms. Throughout the conference, Cox and Lawrence worked tirelessly to promote the establishment of the countries of Transjordan and Iraq to be presided over by the kings Abdullah and Faisal, sons of the instigator of the Arab revolt against the Ottoman Empire, Hussein bin Ali, Sharif and Emir of Mecca. Until her death in Baghdad, she served in the Iraq British High Commission Advisory Group there. Referred to by Persians as Al-Khatun, she was a confidant of King Faisal of Iraq and helped ease his passage into the role, amongst Iraq's other tribal leaders at the start of his reign. He helped her to found Baghdad's Great Archaeological Museum from her own modest artifact collection and to establish the British School of Archaeology, Iraq, for the endowment of excavation projects from proceeds in her will. The stress of authoring a prodigious output of books, correspondence, intelligence reports, reference works, and white papers. Of recurring bronchitis attacks brought on by years of heavy smoking in the company of English and Arab cohorts. Of bouts with malaria. And finally, of coping with Baghdad's summer heat all took a toll on her health. Somewhat frail to start with, she became nearly emaciated. Her work was specially mentioned in the British Parliament, and she was awarded the Order of the British Empire. Some consider the present troubles in Iraq are derived from the lines Bell helped draw to create its borders. Perhaps so, but her reports indicate that problems were foreseen, and that it was clearly understood that there were just not many permanent solutions for calming the divisive forces at work in that part of the world. Creation of Iraq. As the dismantling of the Ottoman Empire was finalized by the end of the war in late January 1919, Bell was assigned to conduct an analysis of the situation in Mesopotamia. Due to her familiarity and relations with the tribes in the area, she had strong ideas about the leadership needed in Iraq. She spent the next 10 months writing what was later considered a masterly official report, Self-Determination in Mesopotamia. A.T. Wilson had different ideas of how Iraq should be run, preferring an Arab government to be under the influence of British officials who would retain real control. On October 11, 1920, Percy Cox returned to Baghdad and asked her to continue as Oriental Secretary, acting as liaison with the forthcoming Arab government. Gertrude Bell essentially played the role of mediator between the Arab government and British officials. Bell had to often mediate between the various groups of Iraq, including a majority population of Shia unregistered trademarkers in the southern region, Sunnis in central Iraq, and the Kurds, mostly in the northern region, who wished to be autonomous. Keeping these groups united was essential for political balance in Iraq and for British imperial interests. Iraq not only contained valuable resources in oil but would act as a buffer zone, with the help of Kurds in the north as a standing army in the region to protect against Turkey, Persia, and Syria. British officials in London, especially Churchill, were highly concerned to cut heavy costs in the colonies, including the cost of quashing tribal infighting. Another important project for both the British and new Iraqi rulers was creating a new identity for these peoples so that they would identify themselves as one nation. British officials quickly realized that their strategies in governing were adding to costs. Iraq would be cheaper as a self-governing state. The Cairo Conference of 1921 was held to determine the political and geographic structure of what later became Iraq and the modern Middle East. Significant input was given by Gertrude Bell in these discussions, thus she was an essential part of its creation. At the Cairo Conference, Bell and Lawrence highly recommended Faisal bin Hussein, former commander of the Arab forces that helped the British during the war and entered Damascus at the culmination of the Arab revolt. He had been recently deposed by France as King of Syria, and British officials at the Cairo Conference decided to make him the first king of Iraq. They believed that due to his lineage as a Hashemite and his diplomatic skills he would be respected and have the ability to unite the various groups in the country. Shias would respect him because of his lineage from Prophet Muhammad. Sunnis, including Kurds, would follow him because he was Sunni from a respected family. Keeping all the groups under control in Iraq was essential to balance the political and economic interests of the British. Upon Faisal's arrival in 1921, Bell advised him in local questions, including matters involving tribal geography and local business. She also supervised the selection of appointees for cabinet and other leadership posts in the new government. Throughout the early 1920s, Bell was an integral part of the administration of Iraq. The new Hashemite monarchy used the Sharifian flag, which consisted of a black stripe representing the Abbasid Caliphate, green stripe representing the Umayyad Caliphate, and a white stripe for Fatimid dynasty, and lastly a red triangle to set across the three bands symbolizing Islam. Bell felt it essential to customize it for Iraq by adding a gold star to the design. Faisal was crowned King of Iraq on August 23, 1921, but he was not completely welcomed. Utilizing Shiite history to gain support for Faisal, during the holy month of Muharram, Bell compared Faisal's arrival in Baghdad to Hasan, grandson of Prophet Muhammad. However, she did not find working with the new king to be easy. "You may rely upon one thing, I'll never engage in creating kings again. It's too great a strain." National Library of Iraq. In November 1919, Bell was an invited speaker at a meeting for the promotion of a public library in Baghdad, and subsequently served on its library committee, as president from 1921 to 1924. The Baghdad Peace Library was a private, subscription library, but in c. 1924 was taken over by the Ministry of Education and became known as the Baghdad Public Library. In 1961, this became the National Library of Iraq. Baghdad Archaeological Museum. Gertrude Bell's first love had always been archaeology, thus she began forming what became the Baghdad Archaeological Museum, later renamed the Iraqi Museum. Her goal was to preserve Iraqi culture and history, which included the important relics of Mesopotamian civilizations, and keep them in their country of origin. She also supervised excavations and examined finds and artifacts. She brought in extensive collections, such as from the Babylonian Empire. The museum was officially opened in June 1926, shortly before Bell's death. After her death, at the emir's suggestion, the right wing of the museum was named as a memorial to her. Death. Bell briefly returned to Britain in 1925, and found herself facing family problems and ill health. Her family's fortune had begun to decline due to the onset of post-World War I worker strikes in Britain and economic depression in Europe. She returned to Baghdad and soon developed pleurisy. When she recovered, she heard that her younger brother Hugo had died of typhoid. On July 12, 1926, Bell was discovered dead, of an apparent overdose of sleeping pills. There is much debate on her death, but it is unknown whether the overdose was an intentional suicide or accidental, since she had asked her maid to wake her. She never married or had children. Some say the death of Major Charles Doughty Wiley affected her for the rest of her life and may have added to a depressive state. She was buried at the British Cemetery in Baghdad's Bab al-Shaji district. Her funeral was a major event, attended by large numbers of people including her colleagues, British officials and the King of Iraq. It was said King Faisal watched the procession from his private balcony as they carried her coffin to the cemetery. Legacy. Contemporary. An obituary written by her peer D.G. Hogarth expressed the respect British officials held for her. Hogarth honoured her by saying, "No woman in recent time has combined her qualities her taste for arduous and dangerous adventure with her scientific interest and knowledge, her competence in archaeology and art, her distinguished literary gift, her sympathy for all sorts and condition of men, her political insight and appreciation of human values, her masculine vigour, hard common sense and practical efficiency all tempered by feminine charm and a most romantic spirit." In 1927, a year after her death, her stepmother Dame Florence Bell, published 2 volumes of Bell's collected correspondence written during the 20 years preceding World War I. A stained glass window to her by Douglas Strachan was erected in St. Lawrence's Church, East Rounton, North Yorkshire. It depicts Magdalen College, Oxford, and Cadamain, Baghdad. The inscription reads, This window is in remembrance of Gertrude, versed in the learning of the East and of the West, servant of the state, scholar, poet, historian, antiquary, gardener, mountaineer, explorer, lover of nature, of flowers and of animals, incomparable friend, sister, daughter. Modern, Gertrude Bell is remembered in Iraq in the 21st century. The British diplomat, travel writer and Member of Parliament Rory Stewart wrote that, "When I served as a British official in southern Iraq in 2003, I often heard Iraqis compare my female colleagues to Gertrude Bell. It was generally casual flattery, and yet the example of Bell and her colleagues was unsettling. More than 10 biographies have portrayed her as the ideal Arabist, political analyst, and administrator." Stewart notes that Bell was both more lively and more honest than political statements in his time. He quotes 6 examples of her writing, the shortest of which is, "No one knows exactly what they do want, least of all themselves, except that they'd own a unregistered trademark T want us." He quotes Bell's colleague, T. E. Lawrence, as saying that she was not a good judge of men or situations, and observes that if there was no ideal solution, however, there were still clear mistakes. Bell should never have acquiesced in the inclusion of the Kurdish-dominated province of Mosul in Iraq. However, he praises her 1920 White Paper, comparing it to General Petraeus's report to Congress. A major new film, Queen of the Desert, chronicling the life of Gertrude Bell, played by Nicole Kidman, is due to be released in 2015. The director is Werner Herzog. Notes. References. Bibliography, writings by Bell, Gertrude. Gertrude Bell, from her personal papers 1914–1926. London, Ernest Benn Limited, 1961, Gertrude Lowthian Bell, Gertrude Bell. Syria, Gertrude Bell From Amurith to Amurith, complete text with illustrations. Works by Gertrude Bell at Project Gutenberg Australia. The Letters of Gertrude Bell, selected and edited by Lady Bell, 1927, Biographies of Bell, Adams, Amanda. Ladies of the Field, Early Women Archaeologists and Their Search for Adventure. Greystone Books Limited. ISBN A978-1-55365-641-8. Bodley, RVC. Hurst, L. Gertrude Bell. Macmillan. ISBN A978-1-258-44101-2. Howell, Georgina. Gertrude Bell, Queen of the Desert, Shaper of Nations. Farrar, Straus and Giroux. ISBN A978-1-4299-3401-5A. Also issued as Daughter of the Desert, The Remarkable Life of Gertrude Bell. Macmillan, 2006. ISBN 1-4050-4587-6, ISBN 0-374-53135-8, Luckitz, Lyra. A Quest in the Middle East, Gertrude Bell and the Making of Modern Iraq. I.B. Tauris. ISBN A978-1-85043-415-3. Retrieved September 23, 2013. Wallach, Janet. Desert Queen. Bantam Doubleday Dell. ISBN A978-0-307-74436-4. Winstone, HVF. Gertrude Bell. Barzan Publishing Company. ISBN A978-0-9547728-0-2. Other sources, Hogarth, David G. Obituary, Gertrude Lowthian Bell. The Geographical Journal 68.4 ppA 363 €368. JSTOR. October 28, 2009. Mayer, Carl E. Brazak, S. B. Kingmakers, The Invention of the Modern Middle East. W. W. Norton. ISBN A978-0-393-33770-9. O'Brien, R., ed. Gertrude Bell, The Arabian Diaries, 1913–1914. Syracuse University Press. ISBN 08156-0672-7. External links: The Gertrude Bell Project based at Newcastle University Library, Gertrude Bell biography. Also Gertrude Bell and her translations of Hafiz, works by or about Gertrude Bell in libraries, archival material relating to Gertrude Bell listed at the UK National Archives. Selwood, Dominic. Gertrude Bell, explorer, archaeologist, diplomat and spy, British Queen of Iraq rests in Baghdad Cemetery. Gertrude Bell, a masterful spy and diplomat, Gertrude of Arabia, September 7, 2006, The Economist, review of Daughter of the Desert, The Remarkable Life of Gertrude Bell by Georgina Howell, review of the Civil Administration of Mesopotamia, London, H.M. Stationery Office. 1920, works by or about Gertrude Lowthian Bell at Internet Archive, poems from the Divan of Hafiz. English translation by Gertrude Lowthian Bell, 1897, The Arab War. Confidential information for General Headquarters from Gertrude Bell, being dispatches from the Secret Arab Bulletin. 1940. Golden Cockerel Press, The Rountons, The Bell Family,